Okay, we're going to continue on, and I want to give a 3-second review. We begin with sachet, recognition of the 6 emotions, partly introduced by Charles Darwin. And we show that these emotions can be blocked, and they can be repetitive. And then we ask the question, where did these adaptations come from? These weird places that people get into, and they come from one source, and that is the fear of death, which is translated to the fear of abandonment for children. And across people's lives, they seek to keep that abandonment card in their pocket, and that causes them to be afraid of intimacy and cherishing tender love. The third point that we're making is that people have parts. It all fits together. Now, liberation psychotherapy, by emphasizing that people have parts or modules, introduces both a real sense of observation and a real sense of how to manage dealing with people who are going to flash these various parts. Now, neuroscientists know that the brain has different modules or parts. There's the reptilian brain and then the massive cerebral cortex. I say massive compared to any other animal or any other living life form. This huge brain does not say, I am now speaking out of the Wernicke area over here, which can listen and speak. It does not say, it does not identify if it's coming from the perceptual part or the emotional part. Rather, the person will say, I this, I that. You get, the brain gives a coherent image. Coherent way to present itself to others. In the same way, the unconscious mind, that part of us that we do not understand but reveals an old adaptation caused by the fear of abandonment. It doesn't say, all right, I will now be acting like a 2-year-old. I will now be acting like an infant who wasn't fed properly. There gets to be no signal. Rather, the person will just say, I. Now, in our training groups, I could slow the camera down, or slow observation down, and say, all right, now watch the switches as the person talks. And I could explain it, my wife could explain it, when a person got into different spaces. Maybe some old repressed space, like I told you of Bert, who all of a sudden found out that he hated his mother. All this stacked anger and rage about when she fell into her script and put other people down. So what I'm saying is that the unconscious mind is an assemblage. It's just like the actual literal brain that we have. And we get different messages from it. Now, the question is, how can we present this quite therapeutic material in a way that's understandable by you? And later on I will show you a little more about observation. But one way I did it in training groups was I presented what I call the Geography of Selves. The Geography of Selves explains different modules or parts that people can get into. Over on this side, the lighter parts are when the person is showing a playful child, a reasonable adult, a quite loving parental approach. And this side has sachet, or the feelings, being fluid. They flow through a person. If they're sad, they cry. If they're angry, they have a burst of anger. So this is pretty understandable in terms of normal human functioning. But sometimes people will turn on these other parts. And I'm going to review a few of those parts with you. You know that I said that I really like Benjamin Woban. This book is out of print now. It's Children's Fears. And I reread it the other day. And I noticed that he was emphasizing two things that I did not put on the chart. I said that some people are wounded in the womb, and then I went to the birth trauma. Now he mentions early feeding problems that gave children fears that later on will stimulate people to be hungry and overeat because they don't know how to address that hurt child within, that hurt little infant who was not fed well, perhaps had a lactose intolerance to milk. Another thing that he points out that I did not put on my chart, but my wife and I were aware of it, is that at 28 months or 7 months of age, a child will experience a fear of strangers. And this is a time, quite frequently, when a mother who's been caring for the child will go back to work. So there will be a strange fear of abandonment that occurs at 7 months of age. And this is recognizable to well-trained therapeutic observers. Also, you can find a module, a part, that has to do with being a premature child or a child of an abusive parent right early on in life. And what happens is the person gets stuck. They are immobilized. A part of their personality is immobilized in that given module. And quite frequently, the person will continue to play it out. It becomes a main reason for the script with its 3 roles of strong, weak, and adaptation. And then on this chart, in these darker phases, I go through what happens when a person is 2 years of age. And the mother does, or the father, gives in to the child, as I've talked about with Ronnie. And the kid gets the abandonment card. And so over and over, he says he's the smartest person in the room. And he goes through a given process that I will explain at a later point. Then I go ahead and explain that some people are all magical and wishing and fantasizing and hoping and talking about what's going to happen in the future. Or they may be a health nut and buy every vitamin that is in the store at a health food store. And these, I don't want to get too complex, but these modules can be stacked. So if a person had a fear of hunger as a baby, it can get to be very magical when they hit 4-year-old. So this is part of the sorting out that a therapist has to do in order to be the most therapeutic, to help the greatest. And so I go on throughout this chart and I explain time after time the various stuck positions that people will get in, because it's very harmful to relationships and it's very harmful to the identity, and it is critical that these be deciphered and confronted and people love through with all the ways that we had of doing psychotherapy through these old hurt places. One of the prime questions that we always ask was, how young do you feel when you feel that emotion? And that would cause the person to immediately flash back to some old scene in their childhood, which we'd have them describe, and we'd find out the decision they made with their conscious mind at that developmental age to do a certain thing. And so we would work on them redeciding re-emotioning, whenever they feel that revisit, they would be able to turn on their adult mind. So I wish I could pass on to everyone this Geography of Selves, but I'm not able to do that. I'll probably only have a dozen copies left, so if anybody's really a professional therapist, I guess they could write me, and I have no use for them because I'm retired, as is my wife. And through these chats, these fireside chats, we want to pass on our information to those who want to get their head on straight, and later we'll talk about how to make your values great. So that concludes this particular lesson. Okay.